Hi guys, welcome to another class of Spain facing the 21st century. Today we're going to have our last session talking about the socialist government between 2004 and 2011, with both of these governments, these two terms of Zapatero. And we're going to be addressing two issues that we haven't addressed yet. One of them is foreign affairs under the Zapatero leadership, and the other one is the public deterioration of the political class image. We more or less we know how it resulted in the 15M movement. And we're going to start with foreign affairs, and we're going to talk about different. Actually, we had a class on foreign affairs, but we address the different strategic aims Spain has. And we more or less talked about Zapatero. Actually, Zapatero foreign affairs started before he was even president. This is a picture of 2003 in the military parade of Spain. That year was the United States, the invited guest to participate in the parade together with the Spanish armed forces. And actually, Zapatero was not standing as the American troops passed through the podium. And actually, this was very controversial. Already, this obviously was starting with bad food. With his relation with the US at this time, it was understood as something very disrespectful. He later said that he did not notice, and he was not going to be standing during the whole parade. But never mind. It's pretty much obvious what happened here, and this has to be understood in the context of the war in Iraq that Zapatero, at the opposition, was opposing at this time. So obviously, there was not a fantastic start for Zapatero, and it continued not in the best way possible. Soon after he took office, one of the first decisions he made as president of the government was to order the return of the Spanish military in Iraq. So that's saying here, the Spanish troops in Iraq that you've already mentioned that were not that many if we compare it to the American or the British deployment. They were coming back that year, and well, even though they were saying that they should not affect the relations with the US, obviously it did. The relation between the Bush administration and Zapatero was never good. However, the relation with the US improved as the US had a new administration, as Obama took office. The relation with Zapatero and Spanish government improved over time. And all of that will have a lot to do with what we are going to mention at the very end with the Alliance of Civilization, but we'll get to that in a minute. Another of the aims of Zapatero foreign policy was to recover the relation with the Mediterranean countries. We mentioned already in class how Maghreb countries, Morocco and Algeria, are particularly important for Spanish interest. And during the previous administration of Aznar, there were tensions with Morocco. Actually, Morocco troops were deployed in a small island to the south of the peninsula in the strait. And this almost caused international conflict. Actually, Spain answered back by deploying troops at that island, and then Moroccan troops retreated. And this was kind of an escalation of tension, and it was not being dealt through diplomatic means. And actually, Zapatero recovered that relation, kind of cherished that relation with Morocco. And we've mentioned quite a few times how important that strong relation it is for Spain still nowadays in the field of, particularly in the fields of security regarding migration and also terrorism. So that was an important aspect. And another point of his agenda was recovering as well the relation with Latin America that has been lost a little bit during the previous administration. Not that many efforts were made. Actually, Ibero-American summits were re-strengthened, so to say. Actually is a picture of an interesting event in the Ibero-American summit when the King of Spain asked Hugo Chavez, president of Venezuela, to shut up in the in the middle of the summit. But now talking about more serious stuff, actually, the relation of Zapatero, particularly with Lula da Silva, the president of Brazil, was particularly good, and that was obviously good for Spanish economic interests. And the last thing I'm going to tell you about the foreign policy of Zapatero has to do with this project, Alliance of Civilization. Actually, this is how we visualize Alliance of Civilization. This is actually a meeting room for the Alliance of Civilization in Geneva, in the UN headquarters in Geneva. And the Project of Alliance of Civilization was a project sponsored by Zapatero, president of Spain, of course, as you know already, and Erdogan, at that time, Prime Minister of Turkey. And the objective of the Alliance of Civilization was the understanding between the Western world and Arabic world, and trying to understand through the understanding of the differences, trying to find a common ground and trying to improve that relation through diplomacy. However, I mean, this concept obviously is very, in a sense, it's easy to embrace it. But the problem here is a rather empty concept, because what's what we share? What are the values we stand behind together? And obviously, using soft power and using diplomacy is something that I mean, completely understandable. But the results of the alliance of civilization were rather weak. Actually, it was even at the point 2006. I don't. Well, you were too young at that time, but at that time it was very controversial. Some cartoons drawn of Prophet Muhammad, and actually. At that time, Al Qaeda criticized these cartoonists and labeled them as targets. And actually, these materialized later in the terrorist attacks against the Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris. And actually, in 2006, Zapatero and Erdogan wrote an article that was published by the New York Times, asking to prevent that kind of cartoons that could offend religious groups. And this was very controversial, because it was actually, in a sense, what they were doing was an attack to the freedom of speech, and that was not fantastic. Never mind, just trying to recap all this a little bit. By the end of the day, the project of Alliance of Civilization was rather empty in the end. It did not materialize in much. And by the end of the day, I mean, push for dialogue, which was something good. However, it was a bit controversial whether dialogue was possible and to what extent should dialogue happened between and to what terms, and what was to be agreed, what was acceptable and what was not. Okay, so this was, I mean, for Zapatero, foreign policy overall, I mean, he made efforts to have a bigger impact and to push for diplomacy and push for understanding and push for I mean, bringing different cultures together. However, the results overall, if we analyze it over time, were rather weak. The Spanish position, for example, in European institutions, even though we did have a voice, they were not as strong. I mean, the position we were at in the European Union, particularly when facing the economic crisis in 2008, was not as strong as this could be expected. Neither was it with the previous administration of Aznar, because the focus was in the US, but actually Zapatero, even though he tried, he didn't really fully recover that Spanish position in the European Union. So this was it. We're going to have a break now, and we're going to continue with the second part of the class in a minute. So see ya.